I want to just welcome you all for coming out after church or after whatever activity you've had to hear Dr. Melissa Clarke. But before I introduce her, I want to acknowledge the lady who made this space available. She's known to many of you from your different endeavors in life, and that is the Honorable Kathy S.
I don't know about the honorable but I just want to welcome all of you here on behalf of Mount Carmel and very quickly introduce a member of our board of trustees. This is Gwen Gleckner.
Okay.
We're talking about being in the minority, so we're really doing it today. But she's good at it. And also a former member of our board of trustees, and that's Olivia Johnson, who joins us today. And maybe we're going to get her back.
Yes.
Now that she's retired, doesn't have much to do.
Oh, please.
Also, we have a wonderful partner within the community. That's the Coalition of 100 Black Women, which is a national organization, as you know, and they are represented today by their president, Linda Caney. And she brought some members with her.
Yes. Marlita Bartlett and Veronica Carter.
Stand up, you guys. We'll give a clap for you. So thanks again, all of you, for coming, and we're all looking forward to hearing Dr. Clarke's presentation.
Amen.
Yes.
Thank you. And I'm going to thank you, Kathy, so much. I'm going to ask that the choir come on up. See, this is being videotaped, so don't be camera shy. You know, when they do the cutaways, they want to see people, not
She wants
chairs.
you in the front seat.
So can I ask actually everybody to move up some?
Oh,
Move up, move up.
this is for the video.
This is for the video.
Come on, you two.
Come on up to the front. First 3 rows would be great.
Well, maybe 2 and 3.
2 and 3? Okay, 2 and 3.
2 and 3 is good.
2 and 3. Do not be bashful. And as you're moving, if you want to get something to eat, that's what it's there for. Thank you again, Mount Carmel and Kathy S. before that. I also would like to acknowledge Nanette Reynolds with Reynolds Event Management. If you could please stand. Okay, shy people in the back. The second and third row. Third, fourth row.
Come on, honey.
Oh, move up, please.
Come on, lady.
Please,
Oh, I
please.
thought she was talking about that.
Why, everybody, for the purpose of filling it up, and you see this young man who's in training for his dad's business. He wants to be able to say, I had people in the first few rows.
Right.
Thank you.
Oh, great.
So, our speaker for today is here all the way from the Washington, D.C. area, actually from Silver Spring, Maryland. And she has come with a passion, a desire, and lots of training. She has been she's been practicing medicine for over 20 years. She is a graduate of Harvard University, top of her class, and also University of California, San Francisco, top of her class. And University of California, San Francisco is one of the top 3 medical schools in the country. She's board certified in emergency medicine, did her residency at Georgetown, George Washington hospitals in Washington, D.C., and has also been an assistant dean in the medical school and been a medical director at one of the insurance companies. So she's seen medicine from many perspectives, and she's going to tell you another one when she comes up here. Her name is Dr. Melissa Clarke, spelled with an E, C-L-A-R-K-E. She is also my sister. And so I know a lot about her, and I'm the older sister, so I remember some of the things that she's going to tell you as to why she has this interest and this passion in medicine, in healing, and knowing that all of us should be empowered to take care of one of our greatest resources, which is our health. So I introduce to some and present to others Dr. Melissa Clarke from Silver Spring, Maryland. The author of, excuse me, doctor, I've got what?
Well, thank you so much
for coming out today. Thank you again to Kathy Espy for this wonderful facility and this wonderful opportunity, and to Nanette Reynolds. And of course, to my sister, I have to thank her doubly because she didn't tell any stories about me being little. I was like over there like, oh my God, I hope she's not going to go back and start talking about diaper stories or anything. And to the choir, I was singing along. All those songs were ones that I grew up singing in my church choir. My mother's a musician and a pianist, and so we were in the choir singing those songs, so I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. So, as Beryl said, the topic of this discussion is 5 things that your doctor wasn't taught to tell you. And this is not a discussion about downing doctors. Some of my best friends are doctors. So this is not what that's about. This is about uplifting patients. And I think it's about time. How many of you, by show of hands, have had some experience where you've been frustrated at being a patient? Okay. All right, for those of you, I think there were 1 or 2 lucky ones. How many of you know somebody who's had experience being frustrated being a patient? Okay, I knew I would get everybody there. So, I'm very passionate about helping to level the playing field between patients, doctors, hospitals, insurance companies, making sure that patients have all the skills and the strategies necessary to get exactly what they need out of each and every healthcare interaction and take ownership of their health. So that's what I'm going to talk about today, and I'm hoping that you'll indulge me just a little bit while I tell you about where my passion came from. Is that okay? I'm just going to take a few minutes to do that. So my dad was a pharmacist, and ever since I can remember, 3, 4 years old, he would occasionally take me to work. And then when I was about 6 years old, we moved to Jamaica, West Indies, which is where he's from originally. And part of his job as a government pharmacist was to go into the very rural areas of Jamaica, no running water, no electricity, and along with a doctor and a nurse, see hundreds of patients a day. They would be lined up, it seemed, for miles. You know, when you're 6, everything seems real big. So it really impressed upon me at a very young age how important health was and the lengths that people would go to make sure that they had medical care. And I think that's what planted the seed for me to go into medicine. So I went off to college, I went off to medical school. I absolutely loved medical school. I loved learning about the body and how it worked. I loved learning how to diagnose people with my 4 senses, not taste. And I loved learning about how medicine and surgery worked. The other part that was really intriguing and something that was new to me was the intimacy between doctors and patients and the things that patients would tell doctors. And I was in San Francisco for medical school in the 80s. So how many people remember what was going on at that time, the disease that everybody was worried about? Exactly. So my roommate, who was from San Francisco but not in medical school, confided in me my very first year. She said, "Melissa, I'm really worried. My dad is gay. And I know the kind of life that he's been living. And I'm really afraid of this new disease thing, AIDS. I'm afraid he's going to get it." So a year went by. We were actually no longer living together, and I just happened to be, at that time, a second-year medical student. I was learning about, diseases and how to diagnose them. So I had a preceptor who was a pulmonologist, a lung doctor. So we met up with him at the hospital, and he showed us an x-ray of a patient with PCP pneumonia, very unusual kind of pneumonia. And then he was like, "Come on, let's go meet the patient." So we went upstairs, and guess who was the patient? My roommate's dad, and he had full-blown AIDS at that point. And he lived less than 2 years. By the time I was graduated, he was gone. He died. And that experience impressed upon me not just the intimacies, the things that people will share with you, but it also impressed upon me the limits of medicine, the things that there aren't cures for, all the diseases that medicine doesn't know how to treat. But that really didn't hit home for me all the way until my own dad got Parkinson's disease. And it took a long time to diagnose him. He had several misdiagnoses. And then, even after the diagnosis was made, the treatment itself worsened another condition that he had, glaucoma. And then finally, there were several medical mistakes made when he was hospitalized. So he finally did succumb to the disease, and I was very disillusioned with medicine for a while. It kind of stopped me in my tracks. But because of my spiritual beliefs, I say this: the Creator is always creating. And out of that situation, it renewed my passion. It woke me up to say, I can contribute in a different way other than seeing patients. I can also contribute by focusing on the quality of care and the communication between doctors and patients to try to make that better. So in addition to practicing medicine, I became assistant dean at the medical school that I was at the time, Howard University Medical School in Washington, D.C. And I focused on designing things for the curricula, not just for medical students, but also practicing physicians to improve communications. And I did the same thing for community members as well. I also explored some things that I was told was kind of hocus pocus when I was in medical school. So other kinds of healing modalities like acupuncture, which I became certified in, Reiki and chiropractic, all different kinds of approaches to healing. And then most recently, I've been involved in healthcare reform and helping hospitals and doctors adopt the changes that healthcare reform is mandating. And all those experiences led me to wanting to write and put in one comprehensive manual a guide for patients, one that would help to empower them with this information so that they would have the chances to transform their life and transform how they interact with the medical system. So, enough about me. Let's jump into these 5 things. Don't be a patient. There's a common source of disease. Health is a daily choice. Stress is your friend. Manage it well. And don't go alone. So, I'm going to start off with asking you guys a question. I know you all came to hear stuff, but I'm going to ask you a question. When you see these images, what comes to mind? Waiting, okay. What else? Complacency. Looking busy. Mm-hmm. Fear. Yes. Isolation. Yes, I think all those. I think there's a disconnect going on in that first picture. Whatever's going on in her mind, she's preoccupied, she's worried. But the doctor or the nurse, I'm not sure who that is in the background, is totally disconnected from that emotion. And vice versa, because she's preoccupied, if this healthcare provider is saying anything to her, she's probably not even picking up on it. And the second thing that strikes me about this picture, other than the isolation, is that the healthcare providers aren't even talking to each other, let alone to the patient. And I submit to you that part of the problem is the word patient. I'm big into what things mean, the root of what they mean. And so I looked up patient, the Latin and Greek. The root word means suffering. Now, having an illness obviously can be an experience that one could equate with suffering very easily. But a lot of times, many of us suffer through the experience of being a patient. And it can put us in a passive mindset where we feel like things are happening to us, similar to suffering. We feel like we don't have any influence over the situation, or we're patiently waiting for the test result, or for the doctor to see us, or for our insurance company to see whether they're going to pay the claim that was submitted. So it can put us in a very passive mindset. And the consequences are, the first one is, you're less likely to acknowledge your role in how you can affect your own current health state, your own current health condition, because you feel passive. You don't feel that you're an active player. So let's get real here. Chronic disease. We all know the word chronic means it's not going anywhere. And that means that for chronic disease, there really is no cure. Even when you look at alternative medicine practices, a lot of times they don't cure them unless the person makes the necessary lifestyle changes to make sure that whatever happened in a positive light continues on. And that traditional doctor-patient relationship doesn't put you in that active mindset to make those changes. The second consequence of being a patient might leave you feeling more vulnerable to the unintentional mistakes that can occur in the course of your care. And I said feel more vulnerable, but actually make you more vulnerable to those mistakes. How many of us have actually known somebody who's had a medical mistake happen to them? Okay? I know at the very least you've heard the commercials, have you been a victim of medical malpractice? You might need a lawyer. So we all know medical mistakes happen. However, research has shown that if you're involved in your care, there are actually fewer medical mistakes made. So again, that traditional patient role isn't one that sets you up for success in your medical care. So in Excuse Me Doctor, I've Got What? We cover tips and strategies for relating to your doctor. And I know this crowd here, I know you all already know how to be a prepared patient. You know to take your medicines with you, or your list of medicines. You know to take your health record. You know to be able to tell the doctor what's bothering you. You know all that stuff. How many people don't know the 5 questions that you must not leave your doctor's office without asking him or her? These are 5 of them up there. And I have everything organized in Excuse Me Doctor, I've Got What in terms of checklists at the end of each chapter. So this is in the checklist from chapter 7. What is wrong with me? And you need to ask that question until you get an answer explained to you so that you can explain it to somebody else. So it's one thing to hear something, but you know when you go home and they say, well, what did the doctor say? So you have to understand at a level that you're able to explain it to somebody else. So if the doctor's talking in medical lease, just say, I don't understand that. The second thing is, what do I need to know about the treatment, its effects, its side effects, and its cost? So when I first take it, what can I expect to feel? And will I even be able to afford it? Is it covered by my insurance? And if it's not, do you have samples and a way to help me continue to get it? Because if you want me to take it, I need to be able to get it, right? Next is, what are the alternatives to taking the prescribed treatment? There's always a choice. Even if it's not taking it and you're getting worse, that's still your choice, and it's your body. Now, some people might disagree with your decision. It might not be a great decision, but you should at least know that you have a choice and what those choices are. There's always a choice. What are the next steps? So when I leave here, do you expect me to see an occupational therapist? Do you expect me to see a physical therapist, a speech therapist, an orthopedic surgeon, a nurse practitioner, an acupuncturist? What do you want me to do? Do I need to make the appointment, or are you going to do that? Finally, what self-care actions do I need to do at home? How often do I need to check my blood sugar? What kind of diet do you want me to eat? You need to know what the expectations are when you walk out of that office. Again, people who are their own advocates are more satisfied with the care they get. Fewer mistakes, more patient satisfaction, and you're in the mindset to make the changes that are necessary. Point 2. Many diseases have common sources. And I actually ran out of space on the slide. So you see cancer, Crohn's disease, breast cancer, multiple sclerosis, asthma, heart attacks, common source. Does anybody know what that common source is?
Diet?
I hear diet, I hear stress. It's actually kind of a scientific word. Chronic inflammation. It's the common pathway, but we're going to get to diet and stress in a minute. Chronic inflammation is responsible for all these diseases that are listed up here because it can occur in any area of your body. It can occur in the lining of the arteries of your heart, which leads to a heart attack. It can occur in your pancreas, which leads to diabetes. It can occur in your joints, which leads to gout or rheumatoid arthritis. It can occur in your muscles, which leads to fibromyalgia, you might have heard of. In your brain, strokes, Alzheimer's disease. In order to understand chronic inflammation, though, let's first talk about inflammation, okay? How many people have had either a bee sting, a twisted ankle, or a cold? Okay, I know I've had all three. So, what is the common denominator there with all those three things? What's happening? What is your body experiencing? Pain. Swelling. Swelling is what happens when you have a cold in the inside of your nose. That's why you can't breathe. Swelling is what's happening in your ankle when you twist it and it blows up. And when a bee stings you and you get swelling wherever the bee stung you. And that is inflammation. And the immune system is what governs that. So that's what's happening up on this slide. The blood vessels that go to wherever that area is where the body signals, clean up on aisle 6, we need some help over here. The blood vessels open up. The plasma leaves the blood vessels and it's carrying all these cells whose job is to repair and clean up and make things better. And it doesn't matter if it's a cancer cell that forms there or if somebody sucker punches you. Same process is happening at the bottom line. And if everything goes well, then, you know, the cleanup occurs and everybody goes home, the swelling goes down, and everything's better, right? And this is happening thousands of times a day because our body is constantly being bombarded by insults. The air we breathe, the food we take in with pesticides, microbes, you know, germs that we're exposed to. But our bodies are designed for wellness because of this repair system. Well, in chronic inflammation, we know what chronic is, it doesn't go away. This inflammatory process keeps going on. It keeps happening, keeps happening. And the result of that is disease. And where the disease happens in your body all depends upon your genes, what you're the most susceptible to. However, how much it happens, what age it happens at, a lot of times depends on the choices that we make. And that's where we're going to get to our next couple of points. So, health is a daily choice. That's the third point. Health is a daily choice. How many of you consider yourselves creative? You're creative. I know all the singers have to. All right. The truth of the matter is, everybody in here is creative. Because as you're sitting there right now, your body is making 2 million red blood cells to pump into circulation for today. That's just today. That happens every day. Your heart has 60 billion cells in it. And in the course of 7 months, your body is going to get a whole new heart because new cells are being made to replace the old ones. 7 months, that's all it takes. So as you can imagine, the decisions that you make on a minute-by-minute basis about the raw materials that you expose your body to is going to make a critical difference for how that creative process happens, right? So, someone astutely said diet earlier, because they probably knew where I was going with this. So, what we put in our bodies are raw materials. Food is medicine, makes all the difference, right? And I know I'm probably preaching to the choir, you guys have heard this, but let me just throw a couple facts out. I put the cherries up there to remind me about gout. Does anybody know anybody with gout? Gout is just another form of chronic inflammation. It occurs in the joints. In cherries, there's something called anthocyanins that actually help to regulate the immune system of people with gout to minimize chronic inflammation so that that person will get, if they eat them on a regular basis, will get fewer attacks of gout. Plant-based diets, that's why they're so important, because they have a lot of the nutrients that our immune system needs to function effectively and do the repair that's necessary every day. I know your doctor or healthcare practitioner has talked to you about omega-3 fatty acids in nuts and salmon. Again, examples of substances that are needed that we could get through our diet that are critical to the health of our immune system and the formation of those new cells every day. Oh, I forgot. Water. Critical. If your body only gets 2% dehydrated, which is basically like 6 glasses of water, you're supposed to be drinking 8 a day. So for you, 2 glasses of water a day, people, you're chronically walking around fuzzy thinking, headaches, not feeling well, because water is necessary to flush out the toxins out of our body and make it function well every day. So, what we put in our bodies. Next is what we do with our bodies. And I'm only focusing on movement here. I'm not getting into the other things, like smoking and things like that. I'm going to focus right now, though, on movement. And this is a new study that just came out specifically for seniors. You don't even necessarily have to get out and run marathons or, do a stationary bike. You don't have to do all that. You just have to have an active lifestyle. You just have to walk or garden or fish. Just the contraction of your muscles releases certain chemicals into your bloodstream that help to regulate the immune system. And so that's why movement is so critical. For seniors, just moving cuts down on heart attacks and strokes by 30%. Just that. And then if you exercise on top of that, that's even better. Sleep. A lot of us have problems sleeping. And that's something that we should talk to our healthcare providers about, because there are a lot of remedies that are non-pharmaceutical remedies, non-medicine remedies for sleeping problems. Sleep is critical, 7-8 hours for adults, more for kids, because at night, when you sleep, your certain channels open up in your brain and release waste products from your brain that accumulate during the day. And if not, if those waste products aren't released, they lead to chronic inflammation and disease. Hence, the importance of sleep. So let's recap. We've hit 3 of the 5 points. Don't be a patient. You have a powerful influence over your own health because you control what promotes chronic inflammation. And then health is a daily choice. What you put in your body and how you move your body and how much rest you get. Next, stress is our friend. Manage it well. So what is stress? Well, it kind of depends who you are. So if you look at this picture, this is some people on a roller coaster ride, right? This guy is on his cell phone. He's probably calling his girl, hey, you know, I'm on the roller coaster ride. Wish you were here. The people in the middle are like biting their nails. They're terrified. And then the people in the back, they're like, wee, life is a party. So, they are each responding to the same stressor in a different way. A stressor is just what's happening to you. Stress is how you interpret it. Stress literally means when the person or the organism, when the person thinks that the resources available to them are not enough to solve the situation. That's what creates stress. The bottom line is stress is an individual experience. It's how you interpret it. So someone had said stress earlier, so again, they knew where I was going with this. Now, why is managing your stress so critical? Well, you all have heard of fight or flight. You know, when a bear is chasing you in the forest, okay, you don't want to be putting your energy into creating new cells. You don't want to be doing that. You don't want to be putting your energy into repair. I mean, you may eventually need it if the bear catches you, but at that moment, you want to be moving as fast as you can to get away. Okay, so the fact that adrenaline shuts down your immune system temporarily is a good thing, because you need that energy to skedaddle. However, if that stress continues to last over days and weeks and months, it wears your body down because a toxic environment is now created because the repair and the creation is no longer happening as it should. And disease occurs. At the weakest link, I call the weakest link whatever your genes, again, whatever conditions you are most susceptible to. So how do we address stress in our lives? Well, because chronic stress, we're all stressed. You know, there's stuff happening to us all the time. Whatever practice we adopt to manage stress in our lives needs to be daily. Research has shown that people who pray and have an active daily prayer life have lower levels of stress. The same is true of meditation. People who meditate, regardless of what kind of meditation you practice, have a lower level of stress hormones in their system. Volunteering, believe it or not, is associated with lower levels of stress. Again, as measured by stress hormones in your system. And finally, yoga and Tai Chi. Again, daily practices are associated with lower levels of stress. So for you who take maybe Tai Chi classes 3 times a week, do them at home too, even when you're not in class. For 5-10 minutes, it'll help. Dancing probably helps too. So, our last point, point number 5. Don't go alone. And the caption says, nagging. If all else fails, try saying it louder. Now, I'm not advocating that you have somebody in your life to nag you about your health, although for some people that might be necessary. What this is really about is when you go into the hospital. You never want to go by yourself. If possible, always have an advocate with you. And I know there are probably a lot of people who are in healthcare here. Could you raise your hands, those who are? All right. So you can probably attest to the fact for everybody else that it's not that hospital staff purposely are trying to ignore you. A lot of times they're understaffed. They're pulled in 1,000 different directions. And unfortunately, sometimes if you're the church mouse, the little quiet one, or you and your family don't say anything, your priorities get put way down here And the people who are the most vocal, the squeaky wheels, they get the most oil. So it's important that you be proactive, or that actually your advocate be proactive for you. Because your job, if you're in the hospital, is to get better and get the heck out of there. Your advocate's job is to represent your wishes and your preferences and to make sure that your concerns are taken care of. Because unfortunately, even when we're just in the doctor's office, and especially if we're in the hospital, the reason we're there, a lot of times, it might be our health condition that makes us not be able to focus. It could be the medicines that we're on that make us a little loopy. And we're not really the ones who can put the picture together and ask all the pressing questions that are necessary. So, these are just 3 scenarios that I have of examples of being a squeaky wheel. The first is immediately alerting the staff if something seems wrong and continuing, not in a irritating way, but continuing to mention it until your concern is addressed. Get all the information you need to make a decision. A lot of times you will be asked to make decisions in a hospital setting. Don't be afraid to say no until you understand everything and all the implications about your decision. And only when you feel comfortable, if you feel in the affirmative, say yes. And then finally, and I have a personal story to go with this, ask for a copy of all test results and get explanations of their meaning. A month ago, my father-in-law had a stroke. And fortunately, my husband and I were with him that day. We recognized something was wrong, and we took him to the emergency department. He got a CAT scan, and the doctor assured us, oh, the CAT scan is fine. Well, I stepped out for a moment, I came back in, and I said to the nurse, hey, can I see a copy of the results of all the testing that's been done so far? So she showed me the CAT scan result among the blood tests and everything. The CAT scan said stroke. So I said to the doctor, hey, I thought you said the CAT scan was normal. And he said, oh, it is. I said, no, look it up on the computer, because that's not what the computer says. He looked it up. Sure enough, he came back to me. He apologized. Oh, I'm sorry. You're absolutely right. You know, the nurse told me that it was normal. So I don't know if he was truly blaming the nurse or not, but what I envision may have happened is maybe the nurse was talking about a different patient. So it's important that even if you don't know what the test is for, or you can't interpret the test yourself, still ask for a copy of all your test results. Number one, you'll have a copy of it that you can show to your healthcare provider the next time you go. But most importantly, it forces that person who did the test to look at the result and go over it with you so that you then know exactly what it's about. So no news is not necessarily good news. Make sure you get a copy of your results. So, I'm going to end there. Be health empowered. That's my main message. It's the reason why I wrote, excuse me, doctor, I've got what? I am on Twitter, for you tweeters, at Dr. Melissa Clarke. Clarke has an E. I'm on Facebook, Dr. Melissa Clarke. Clarke has an E. And I also have a blog as well. And you can email me, ask me questions anytime. I welcome them all. And I just want to thank you for your attention and for coming today. And I'm happy to take any questions. And I'll also be signing books in the back. Thank you.
Last information, how you can get in touch with you, is that all in the book?
Yes, actually on the very last page of the book. Yes. But the email address is, I can put that back up, info@drmelissaclarke.com. Yes.
How willing are physicians to give you your test results? I mean, is that standard practice for them?
Yes, it's standard practice. And actually with healthcare reform, I know what's getting attention right now with healthcare reform is the health information exchanges. However, there are other parts to it too, and that have happened even in the past. One of them has to do with, making sure the transparency of information for patients. And doctors are required to give you that information, whether you ask for it or not. And so you may have noticed, I know at OSU there's my chart, yes, where you have your own patient portal where you can see your results, and results get pushed to you if you're on the computer. But if you're not on the computer and you don't have my chart, you can always ask for a printed copy of your test results. Yes, ma'am.
If you have a specialist who changes HMOs, and what does one do if you don't have any more insurance? They are no longer covered in Humana, so what does it do?
Well, I actually cover that in 2 separate chapters. But the first thing is, unfortunately, you're a little bit out of luck if your doctor is not covered by your new insurance, which is what I think you're asking. But one of the things that I talk about is how to take inventory of your own preferences and your own needs, and then interview doctors and find a doctor that best meets your needs, because you're going to need a new doctor, basically. So that process is very important, because a lot of us settle for somebody who really we don't connect with. And I think that connection is really critical for health and being interested in the outcome and wanting to go back to that doctor. So you really want to make sure that you have a relationship with your healthcare provider, and the only way to do that is to really put the time in on the front end to make sure that you're getting somebody that you want to work with, that you want to partner with in your health. So in the checklist at the end of chapter 6 are all the things that you can do to figure out how to evaluate a doctor and how to decide if that doctor is right for you. I don't know who was first, so I'll go, right there, and then I'll go back this way.
Some doctors are going into concierge services. How do you evaluate whether that is a better service as opposed to going to someone who has a larger client base?
Sure. Well, I think it comes down to 2 things. And for everybody who doesn't know, concierge medicine is a new practice that doctors are doing really to get around having to deal with insurance companies a lot. And number 2, to make the size of their practice smaller. So what they do is they charge an upfront fee, say like $1,000 a year, for you to join. So like Costco, for you to join. So you're a member now of their practice. And because they're getting reimbursed up front, they can cut the number of people that they have to see, have a smaller patient panel, so they can, the people who choose to opt in, they can spend more time with and give more personalized service. You don't have to wait to be seen. So obviously, if it's something that you can afford and it's a doctor that you like, I think it's okay. I personally am not crazy about it. My specialty is emergency medicine. The reason I went into emergency medicine is because I believe in democracy. I like the fact that anybody who comes to the emergency room is going to be taken care of. And I think that that practice really, cuts out a whole segment of society that can't afford to pay up front. Now, there are some people who do have health savings accounts associated with their insurance, and you might be able to use a portion of your health savings account to pay for the fee to join the practice. So that might be one way that you can finance it if you don't want to pay it all, out of pocket. But it's definitely an option, and if you like that doctor and you can afford it, I see no reason not to go with it. There was a young lady over here.
I did. You mentioned earlier about patients having an advocate. What about those that maybe don't, that are elderly and they're, they don't have family for whatever reason, they might be in a different town? Who should they contact, or how should they find an advocate sort of they can trust?
Sure. Some hospitals have navigator programs that, help patients navigate that hospital system. But there are foundations, one I know is patientadvocate.org, that actually will help find an advocate for you. Or there are actually organizations where you can pay to have an advocate to come for you. But those are kind of 3 options to look into. And I know it's a challenge. Not everybody has that luxury. Yes, Norma.
Okay, so this is my question. Yesterday, or Friday or Thursday, whatever, when you were on the radio,
Yes.
you talked about the people that are upset that they are not, they're being kicked off of, well, the president said that you can keep your doctor and your insurance. And there's a small group of people that are not able to do that. So, and your explanation was that these people have, the reason they're being, said they have to get a new insurance is because their insurance is not meeting the standards of
Right.
the new healthcare.
That's correct.
So my question is, why wouldn't the president or the people over the healthcare just tell them you're getting substandard insurance? That's why we're making you get better. I mean, it's better for you. Why wouldn't they do that? Why is he just going to tweak it just to make people happy about that? Because it's really doing them a disservice.
Yeah. I don't know.
Well, you should call him. I know you got.
However, I would like to reiterate that point because it is important that a lot of the healthcare reform had to do with insurance reform. And that started back in 2010. And insurance companies have had to conform to the new higher standards that have been set by the Affordable Care Act in terms of what services they offer. And a lot of the people who are upset about the fact that their policies have been canceled, they probably have never had to access those policies because then they would have gotten a really bad surprise. So for example, there's some policies that don't cover rehab. So if you went into the hospital and you had a stroke and, you know, God willing, you got out and you now had to go to rehab and then your insurance says, oh, well, didn't you read the fine print? We don't cover that. That's a problem. And so there's now a standard suite of expectations that insurance companies will cover. And if your policy doesn't match up with that, then the insurance companies are forced to cancel it because of the new regulations. So that's how that works. Why it has not been explained that way, I have no clue. Yes, one question back there.
I had a question. How do you know if your doctor is having you do unnecessary tests? About 4 or 5 years ago, I got in a motorcycle accident and I broke my thumb. And I initially started my care at Ohio State, and in the midst of doing that, I decided to go to a hand specialist outside of Ohio State. So I go to the specialist with films in hand from Ohio State University, and the first thing he does is ask me to go get some more x-rays done.
Yeah.
It just seemed like it was a waste of my time and money to get x-rays done twice, because I'm confident that Ohio State's pretty competent at x-raying my hand. Does that happen much, and is it a doctor's need to make more money, or what? What do you?
Absolutely, it happens. And I've heard explanations like, oh, well, their films aren't as good as ours, or they don't get the views that I wanted. And that might be true. There is some truth to that because a hand surgeon is going to need a lot more detail than your primary care physician if surgery is required, for example. So there is some truth to that. But that's where asking comes in. So is there new information? Is there a new way that you're going to do this? Because if there isn't, I don't want to be exposed to extra radiation. That's actually one of the other things with healthcare reform. They're making sure that hospitals and doctors don't expose people to unnecessary radiation. There are caps on the amount of radiation that you can get. Because the more radiation you get, obviously, the higher risk for cancer. So, yes, unnecessary tests happen. If you suspect that that's the case, ask your doctor, please justify this, because I really don't want unnecessary radiation. And explain to me why this test is needed and it's different than what I've gotten before. What new information is this going to give you?
I think you're in such a vulnerable state when you go to a doctor a lot of times that you pretty much just kind of say, okay, whatever you want to do, go ahead and do it. And then in hindsight, afterwards, you kind of reevaluate the whole process and you're like, well, wait a minute, that didn't make sense, or that didn't make sense. But oftentimes it's way after the fact, you know.
You know, the fact of the matter is we're consumers educated consumers in so many areas of our life. We have Angie's List. We have, all these resources on the internet to help us be educated consumers. But when it comes to healthcare, it's I call it the last frontier for the educated consumer. We just don't have that mindset. And it's a lot of times, like you said, because we're under the weather. It's because we're not 100% of our game. But if you suspect that, you're not getting the quality of care that you want, don't hesitate to get a second opinion. I also talk, and excuse me, doctor, I've got what, about the signs of when you should start thinking about getting a second opinion and have a very low threshold for getting second opinions. Anyone else? Yes. Kathy.
It's not a question, but I can really relate to what he said about unnecessary test or not. And after many years of dealing with two sick parents, I have come to realize myself that it's almost like if you want something done, when something goes wrong, you say, if I wanted it done the right way, I should have done it myself. Mm-hmm. I think that sometimes they take an x-ray, and then they look at someone else's x-ray, and they operate or treat you according to the x-ray that you brought them. Mm-hmm. I mean, you're assuming it really came from Ohio State and it's right and all that, and probably 99% of the time it is, but anyone who's going to operate on you or do something wants their own test. They want their own blood test because they know their system and they know it's right, and they want their own x-rays because they're going to work on you. They want to work on you based on everything they're doing for you, and instead of relying on what someone else said. And an example is what you said about the doctor who trusted the nurse who said there was no stroke. Mm-hmm. Had he looked himself,
he would have seen.
He would have seen there was a stroke. So sometimes the middle person to a person who really has something serious to take care of with you, the person just does not want to trust another person's workup to that point. They want their own. Mm-hmm. And I learned from my parents, you can't fault that just because of the one was the example of what you said. Yeah. Had you not been as smart as you are and as knowledgeable, you would have taken that person home with no treatment, and then that would have been other things.
Right. Well, I think the important thing, though, is if you if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask the questions. Don't hesitate to get the explanation from the specialist as to why they need new tests, why they need new x-rays. Question it. If it is not a satisfactory answer, then don't stick around. I think that's really the bottom line. Anyone else? Yes.
I had an experience that was similar, but with a twist. I was in the hospital and had some surgery. And I got the hospital bill, and I don't know why I thought to do this, but I asked my doctor to review the hospital bill. And it turned out that there were things on the bill that the doctor had not prescribed.
Yes.
And so it had to be taken off my bill. And I would not have thought to, I still don't know why I thought of it then, but I would not have thought to do that, thinking that whatever the hospital did, the doctor had, had requested it.
Excellent point. Chapter 10 is called Financing Your Health Care. Not only does it cover insurance issues, how to get insurance, it's open enrollment for a lot of people in Medicare and at work. It's open enrollment on the healthcare exchange, so it covers all how to decide what insurance plan is right for you. If you don't have insurance, it covers how to get high quality care without insurance. And then it also covers how to negotiate a hospital bill, how to negotiate a doctor bill. People don't know you can do that. The first step is reviewing it to see, well, I didn't get that, I didn't get that. And if you don't have a doctor to do it with you, you can go to the hospital billing office and ask them to verify that this was actually done. And then you can sit down with this is especially if you don't have insurance, you can sit down with the hospital billing office and negotiate that bill. Because if they send it to collections, they're going to have to pay the collections agency 20%. So, and also a lot of hospitals have charity funds. So if it's going to break your bank, discuss it with the hospital, and a lot of times they will write off a certain percentage of your care. So that was a very important lesson, and thank you for bringing that out, because a lot of people don't know that. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Thank you.
You can go back in the books over and she'll autograph a book for you. The books are $20.
And I just want to say, as one of the hostesses for this event, again, thank you so much. I know time is valuable, and for you to come out and spend your time to hear this, which I hope was very edifying for you. You learned something new, and you'll be able to take it away with the book and reference it over and over again. So again, thank you to Dr. Melissa Clarke. And someone said to me, you didn't introduce yourself. Yes, I did. I barely understand. I think they were saying I'm a city council person in Gahanna. But I am delighted to be here, and I thank Kathy SB again. Thank Mount Carmel, and I thank Reynolds Event Management. Thank you, Nanette Reynolds. Thank you both.
All right, thank you, everyone.